Hey, so how's this for a segue? One more thing that's technically about UFC 202, but also how social justice warriors are just obnoxious, fucking virtue signaling pieces of shit. So I was reading post fight news on Google News about UFC 202, and I came across this article in the headlines section, no less. The one of the big, most important things apparently about UFC 202, where it's like Conor McGregor, Conor McGregor, Conor McGregor, and then who the fuck is Jessica Hudnall? Well, Jessica Hudnall, I think, is a freelance journalist. There's nothing about her on Wikipedia. I couldn't quite figure out in the time I was willing to spend on it if she was tied to any of the regular MMA news journalism sites like Bloody Elbow or MMA Mania. I could only really find like her Twitter where she was mentioning, "Hey, I broke this big story. I feel like a real MMA journalist now." So what was the big story? Well, the big story was that's racist. So, UFC newcomer making his debut at UFC 202, a very badass and promising prospect by the name of Mike Perry, was fighting a UFC veteran Hyun Gyu Lim. Now, apparently, during part of the pre-fight, before they got into the octagon and did their introductions, one of the coaches, it's not identified as who, said to Mike Perry, "You're gonna beat his ass, Mikey. He can't even open his fucking eyes." Which, ooh, Hyun Gyu Lim is Korean, and that's very racist. And ladies and gentlemen, if you don't want to spend the time to Google Hyun Gyu Lim, uh, I could do an impression of him. You know a French Stewart from Third Rock from the Sun. Anybody ever watch that show in the '90s? It's a very. You see this? Yeah, not all Koreans have eyes like this, but Hyun Gyu Lim does. And despite him being the much taller and rangier fighter, which I'm mentioning because Koreans are normally short, that's racist. Mike Perry kicked his ass in very, very impressive fashion, and probably is going to get a new contract. Nice. But was that really racist? Because, excuse me, but doesn't racism usually have something to do with delusions of superiority, hatred, irrational fear, or disgust? It just really seems like, yeah, Hyun Gyu Lim had eyes tighter than Clint Eastwood in The Desert Sun, which doesn't say anything about his character or his value as a person or the quality of him as a fighter or anything about him other than, like some Koreans, very closely, closed eyes. So what? He didn't do poorly. He just lost. And it was a good fight. And that's racist, apparently. Perhaps feeling that this evidence was a little lacking, Miss Hudnall, Jessica Hudnall, decided to also bring up that Donald Cerrone once, who's another welterweight fighter, once had made a comment about Daniel Cormier, who's a heavyweight, fighting Anderson Silva, saying that Daniel Cormier fought like a fag. And she linked to this in one of those little hyperlinks where she mentioned that UFC is also an organization that struggles with homophobia. Look, these are macho men who fight for a living and train with other macho men in gyms to prepare to fight for a living. And it wasn't too long ago where calling somebody a fag could mean like being a coward or being an asshole or being a punk or being a wuss, or being really inelegant or flamboyant. I don't know exactly what he meant by that, but it wasn't really homophobic. Just like mentioning the state of Hyun Gyu Lim's normal facial expression wasn't really that racist either. These are really absurd, desperately reaching comments, and apparently this is worthy of headline news, breaking news. Some coach of a new UFC fighter made a somewhat in poor taste joke about a Korean fighter. And then another fighter, in the heat of his macho, selling a fight, said, "Fought like a fag." And I don't think either one of these guys are going to be punished, which is, of course, what Jessica Hudnall wanted to happen. We wanted some punishment for these fighters. Well, I don't know if she's ever heard UFC President Dana White speak. You're not getting your way, bitch. He would tell you almost probably verbatim to blow it out your fucking ass. And I'm going to as well. Fuck your article. Fuck your breaking news. Fuck your new success. Fuck you being on Google headlines. You're garbage. Okay, you suck. Your work is shit. Your little 2-paragraph fucking desperately reaching accusation of impropriety, of racism and homophobia by the UFC Just fucking, just fuck yourself. That's just sad. I want to be really angry, but it's just fucking pathetic. Thanks for watching, everybody.